So here's how I look at it. First principles, okay? You said you grew up in a gun-friendly household. I'll be honest with you, I did not. Actually, my parents were immigrants to this country. We didn't go hunting. We didn't go sport shooting. I can probably tell you the number of times I've been to a shooting range counted on one hand. I like it, but it's not my main hobby. But the reason I'm a gun owner is that I believe in the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is the one that gives teeth to every other amendment in this country. I'm not going to be able to recite it off the top of my head, but I'm going to give you a couple of quotes, okay? Have some fun with this. What did they say? The liberty of individuals shall not be restrained by an overreaching government. It's a quote from the Constitution of Iran, actually. It's 177 of these lines. Iran actually, our Bill of Rights just has 10 of them. They've got 177. That's how much freedom they give you in Iran, except the one thing it's missing is the Second Amendment. China, really similar things. This one makes me laugh because I've done business in China. I've been an exchange student in China. Actually, in my senior year at Harvard, went to the Harvard of China, Beida. I understand that's a whole dark and twisted regime over there. But they will say, what do they say? You cannot infringe the property rights of a person and cannot unlawfully detain an individual. This is a joke if you live in CCP-controlled China. But again, why? They don't have a Second Amendment. And they actually ban citizens from owning guns, just like Iran does. So the reality is that when you don't have the backstop of the Second Amendment, that's what allows the government to reach as far as it does. So I don't think the right approach here is compromise. I think it's being uncompromising about the principles of that Second Amendment. Actually, even in this country, let me just take a survey by way of hands here. Who here knows what the first anti-gun laws in America were? Who did they target? Nailed it. After the Civil War. Good job. What is your name? Are you a student? Here? What year? Freshman. Where did the guy go to high school? Give him a round of applause. God bless your history teacher in high school, because your history teacher did something good. The number one gun control law that first existed in the United States was designed to say, okay, we fought this Civil War to give black Americans the liberties that they were not given at this country's founding. We thought we fixed it. Except there was one little twist. The southern states passed laws that said that black people couldn't own guns. That is how you get to KKK to Jim Crow, to Martin Luther King Jr. himself being denied unfairly a concealed carry permit by J. Edgar Hoover's FBI. So that's why I think the Second Amendment's important. I'm going to go on a tangent here. I haven't shared this before in the campaign trail, but it's just the way I think of it. So who here has heard the term mutually assured destruction, MAD, during the Cold War? Does that name mean anything to you? A couple of the more experienced members of the audience raised their hand there, right? So that's good. So the basic idea was that the Soviet Union and the U.S. actually would never go to war with each other because both sides had nuclear weapons. And so it was mutually assured destruction. And turned out they never went to war with each other. Well, why didn't they go to war with each other? Because each side knew that the other side was armed in a way that it was in neither side's interest to do it. The founding fathers of this country, they basically wove in mutually assured destruction into the Constitution between the government and its people, between the government and the governed. That's really what the Second Amendment is about. It doesn't sound, makes your stomach feel a little uncomfortable if you remember that. It's not about hunting and sports shooting. That's what it's really about. But the founding fathers knew, actually not far as well like being in New Hampshire, not far from here, places like Concord, Lexington, where the first shots were fired in the American Revolution, the shots that were heard around the world. They were because the British monarchy tried to take away the guns of the American Revolutionary soldiers. And that was why the founding fathers of this country said, we will never do to our people what the British monarchy tried to do to us. So I think the right answer, whatever it is, can't be trampling on that freedom. Now, what do we do with this epidemic of mass shootings in our country? It has gone up in the last 50 years. There's no doubt about it. Well, I think the number one thing we do is we address the mental health epidemic that actually accounts for it. an epidemic of fatherlessness in this country. You know what all of those mass shooters have in common? They grew up in an unstable family household, and they're mentally unstable due to mental health conditions that we haven't addressed. You want to know what happened in the meantime? The rise of the internet, the rise of social media companies. We should ban addictive social media usage in kids under the age of 16 instead of actually taking guns away from law-abiding adults in this country. We should actually go upstream and create policies that foster true stable family formation sooner than actually taking guns away from law-abiding adults in this country. The per capita gun ownership isn't that different. The mental health epidemic is what's different over the last 50 years. And for schools in particular, that strikes a special place in my heart. I've got 2 kids. One of them is about to be old enough to enter the public school system. He's 3 years old. By the time he turns 5, he'll be in kindergarten. I think it is unconscionable that we protect our shopping malls, the thousands standing around TSA at the airports, more than we actually protect our own kids in schools. So one of the things I've said, somewhat controversially I have to admit, was that if elected as U.S. president, I would shut down the U.S. Department of Education. Not because I don't care about education, but because I do, actually. They spend $83 billion on worse than nothing, on agendas that actually set back education in this country, including, by the way, tilting the scales to 4-year college degrees without actually offering any help to people who want to get a 1-year program to be a welder or a mechanic or anything else. I think that's one of the many things they do wrong. But if we shut down the Department of Education for just a quarter of that budget, we could put 3 armed security guards in every public school in this country. You want to protect the kids? Let's protect the kids. That's exactly how we do it. And so I think that it might be a fashionable and politically convenient thing to say. To say we want to take away guns, that's not the right answer. It's to go upstream, solve the mental health epidemic, secure the schools, solve the fatherlessness problem, and then we'll actually have a revival. Great question, very honest. Thank you.